Happy holidays to the friends and family of the Badass Agile podcast. I want to let you know that for Boxing Week, there's a sale going on in the store, 15% off all my courses. So go to learning.fusechamber.com to find your next great learning experience, and I want to wish you a very happy and healthy 2026. 2025 was a big year of change for Agile and for all of us. And through it all, I kept looking for the annual State of Agile report, but I couldn't find it. So I thought, well, maybe they stopped making it. And then all of a sudden, one day in late December, I decided to go have another look, and there it was. So why don't we take a look at it? This is my review of the 2026 or 18th State of Agile annual report. That's this week on the Badass Agile podcast.
Greetings, team. Welcome to the Badass Agile podcast. I'm your host, Chris Williams.
My good friend, welcome back. It's great to see you. Happy 2026. We're just kicking off the year. And as I mentioned, I've bumped into one of my favorite reports, the State of Agile report. It's released by a company called Digital.ai. They seem to be a consulting firm, but I've always found the research to be excellent and very, very relevant, and it helps me shape my decisions every year, and it might for you too. So I'm going to give you my take on it. I've added some of my own inflection to it, or my own commentary, if you will, but this survey is based on conversations with 350 companies. So they publish a bunch of questions, respondents respond, and then they collate, present that data with some interpretation. So I'm going to read off of my notes, my research. Here we go. I think one of the biggest things that you'll read in this report, not surprisingly, is that Agile's kind of teetering on a big change moment. The one thing that always makes me laugh is when people say, oh, this is the year where we should be returning to the original intent of the Agile principles, the founders, the authors, the manifesto, and so on. Well, we should be doing that all the time. That shouldn't be something we suddenly realize we've been doing this a little bit all wrong, and it's time to correct course. But here we are. I love this report because it talks about the points of failure. It talks about the shifts in adoption with real hard metrics. So let's take a look. Overall, it seems like Agile investment is up, but we're noticing that practices are partial, inconsistent, or siloed. There is naturally a big focus in this report on AI. I'll dig into that somewhat. I'm not sure it's the most important thing, but of course it's important. My takeaway from the opening remarks in the report is that the promise of Agile still to this day remains largely unfilled. And although there's tremendous opportunity being presented with AI, and it's a cool new technology that's not going anywhere, it is not going to save us from the very human mistakes that have caused us to miss the point for 2.5 decades. Thinking that AI is the savior it fits the narrative that you hear everywhere, but it's simply not true. Until we fix the human problems around Agile adoption, none of this stuff goes away. So another key takeaway of the report is they admit and they can measure that pressure is mounting to demonstrate the value of an Agile investment. Large companies are frustrated with the way Agile is being applied and the kind of financial measurable results that it returns. One of their measurements is that only 1 in 10 of the organizations surveyed report a high level of competency across the organization with Agile, and these numbers haven't changed in a decade. Ding, 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 hello, warning sign, and by the way, opportunity for those of you who are wondering if Agile is dead. Only 13% say it's deeply embedded across business and technology, and that's the problem. We've always talked about that here, that it's not strictly a technical concern, and that focusing on being a technical scrum master, a technical Agile coach only misses the point of agility. I'm going to say something here that's not in the report. It's worth repeating. Agile shows up on the expense side of most balance sheets. Unless you are a tech-oriented company where the products that you make and sell are technical in nature, software, electric cars, rocket ships, whatever it may be, unless that's your business, technology is always an expense, and so is Agile sitting on top of it. Worse still, if the only thing Agile does is make tech delivery somehow better, executives are going to see that as a so what. And it gets worse when you hear metrics like this. Investment is up or holding steady for 75% of companies. Oh, wow, that's great news because we talk about Agile being dead all the time. But for 75% of companies, investment is not decreasing. However, 73% could not report the ability to deliver real value. Does that sound like a problem to you? It sounds like something that people are forced to invest in, the same way that they're forced to invest in cybersecurity. We wish we didn't have to spend this money, but if we don't, we're doomed. That's a terrible place to be if you're trying to sell your services or find a job in an area that businesses technically don't value. Guess what's going to happen? The rates are going to go down. The demand to do more with less is going to go up. It's a big poop show. Worse still, the survey reveals that more and more companies are under pressure to control costs and demonstrate ROI. Again, this is a bad place to be. We invest in it because we think we have to. It's what we've been doing for a decade now. We can't just shut it off. But it's like a sunk cost fallacy. The only thing worse than wasting money was to admit that it was a waste. So what's happening in response is that 74% of companies are using some kind of hybrid or home-rolled approach. The last report showed that number at 50%, so that is a big jump. So investment's increasing, ROI is not provable, satisfaction is decreasing, and we're starting to ask Scrum Masters and Agile coaches to diversify their role. Now, only a small number, 14%, 13%, say they've completely shifted away from Agile, and their Agile responsibilities have decreased, but they're being asked to do something else, like maybe integrate AI or automation. Many people, about a quarter, say they're doing less coaching and evangelism, which kind of makes sense. But the biggest trend that I want you to focus on is that 30%, almost 30%, say that they're now accountable for tying and monitoring Agile work to a business outcome. And that means they're more involved in things like product planning, delivery prioritization, portfolio decisions. The good news is that we've reached a steady state with Agile where visibility into what's being developed and delivered is somewhat improving. 64% see that Agile teams can see the DevOps pipeline. 64% say they have visibility into the planning of the developmental pipeline. Enterprise planning tools are helping Agile align DevOps and testing teams. But again, those metrics have nothing to do with business, you notice? It's just about making the development process better. So here's what's starting to emerge for me. I've always said this won't be terribly popular. I don't think there's any point in scaling Agile. I think it's impossible to scale it properly and it will end up costing you more than you gain from the effort. Except. When it comes to development teams, if we can take from Agile practices, Agile principles, Scrum practices, Lean practices, if we can borrow from those to improve the way we deliver software, and where some things are waterfall, because let's say they're highly regulated, leave them waterfall. But why not take advantage of continuous improvement or Kanban boards? Why not take advantage of prioritization? We're just not going to do it in a rigid Scrum framework way because that's the factor that makes scaling Scrum so expensive and so difficult to do in a way that's satisfactory. And you might say, no, Chris, Agile's, and Scrum is terribly satisfactory. Well, not according to these results. Dissatisfaction, inability to prove ROI is very, very difficult. This is further evidenced by the amount, the number, the frequency, and the recency of layoffs and the difficulty of finding new work at a good rate of pay. Guess what? The writing's right there. So we see metrics like almost 50% have automated development delivery processes. That's wonderful, but they're reporting that they don't understand why this is valuable. Now you might say, well, Agile, Scrum, ways of doing things, improve quality, but the metrics say the opposite. Better automation, visibility, integration. The survey says those things are going up, but quality is getting worse. 63% say that they struggle to deliver high-quality software, which is up by 12% from the last report. Yet, automation's better, integration, visibility, all those things are better. How can this be? Well, the first thing to realize is that the problem with Agile in 2026 ain't the tools. Only 50% of product managers say that they can manage the full product delivery pipeline and measure business or customer value, which means that these great tools, which are providing all this visibility, aren't helping us tie our Agile efforts to value. And to make things worse, if quality's going down and the business connectivity to the development pipeline isn't great, Infrastructure's improving, yes, but business outcomes aren't. And guess what? This is a point that I think most agilists miss. CEOs don't sit around fantasizing about Agile. They don't care about your Scrum process. They don't care about Scrum at all. And while delivery visibility and automation and great tool implementation might be important to us developers, to a CEO, if quality goes down and you can't find cost improvement or you can't find impact on top-line revenue, it's only a matter of time before they start saying, well, why are we spending money on this? Maybe we should stop, which is what you see happening in the market right now. True? So where does all this come from? In my humble opinion, it's not because the tool implementations are wrong or incorrect. It's not because we're not doing SAFe correctly. I always say there are no Agile problems, only human problems, and that's no more evident than it is right here. At the end of the day, for Agile to work well, we have to be willing to fail, to use controlled experiments to validate ideas before we go ahead and build them. But businesses aren't willing to do that. Businesses at scale especially are highly risk averse, so what do? They spend 6 months writing a requirements document that they make sure everybody signs off on so that it feels safe, lowercase safe, to build the thing. Agile demands that we run more experiments to solve difficult problems, and we understand that those experiments might fail. So to control the cost of those experiments, we execute a narrow focus on MVP and deliver enough things to just enough people to determine if the experiment works or not. But we're not willing to do those things. Those things sound scary. Those things sound like, oh my God, we're going to waste money. But if you read this report, it sounds like we're wasting all kinds of good money on Agile implementations that don't demonstrate any ROI. This is a dangerous game because if we keep this up, eventually they're going to start slashing Agile budgets and say, this was a failed experiment of the worst kind. It's an experiment that we ran full bore, pedal to the metal, for a decade. It cost us 7 figures, 8 figures, maybe 9 figures, only to find out it doesn't work. Well, hold on. Why doesn't it work? One of the good old culprits is the leadership gap. According to this report, only 15% of business leaders are actively shaping Agile practices. Jeff Sutherland is cited in the report, and he says that organizations are trying to get Agile outcomes from systems designed for predictability, not adaptability. So the problem's with the operating model. Let's pedal backwards on that. I just said that people don't want to do unsafe things. They feel that over-documentation and over-planning and big, long runways give you predictability. But wanting predictability is the wrong desire. Empirical certainty is the very best kind. And the only way to get that is to try something, have it fail or not, then decide what to tweak, what to cancel, and what to move forward with. Then the job of optimizing Agile is simply a job of minimizing the downside risk. So remember, tools and automation are not fixing this problem when only 15% say business and executive leaders are actively shaping Agile practices, and yet 76% of people feel under pressure to prove ROI, that is to say, tying outcomes to Agile execution. Then we have a leadership gap. A clear line of sight from work items to business goals just isn't there. And most people believe that this is the most impactful thing that they could do to help. 29% say it's a culture focused on outcomes and adaptability, while 27% further say that stronger leadership support and alignment would help their Agile implementations go better. So 56% of the respondents. And remember how just last week I did an episode about a LinkedIn post where I read someone say that accountability is violence. And yet, read between the lines in this report, more accountability, greater attribution of our efforts to their impact on measurable business outcomes. The metrics that matter to the business is the key. Go figure. We have lost our collective minds. Sutherland also says that organizations want Agile outcomes from industrial age systems, and it doesn't work. It ain't the systems. It's industrial age thinking. Competitive advantage, I'm going to say this one more time, comes from speed and responsiveness. Your ability to put things in the market that customers are willing to pay for. People have infinite choice. The strategic decisions to make are not which tool to buy. but which experiments do we believe will help us dominate our market or improve revenue or in general just please the shareholders? But only 15% of organizations are making that investment. So leaders are demanding faster, better results from systems, people systems, and technical systems that don't understand or actively guide decisions. So the rigid framework model's breaking down. And yet, 80% of the people, maybe more, that I encounter on social media, especially on LinkedIn, talking about solving the agile problems of the future are trying to double down on process, on framework. We don't need another framework. We don't need another tool. And I shouldn't have to tell you this, because the much venerated manifesto says right in it, people over tools and processes. But what do? Oh, tools. Oh, process. More tools, more processes. We need an operating model that connects strategy to execution. Product thinking instead of project thinking. I've been hearing that one for probably 20 years now. Organizing around value streams that cross-cut traditional silos and metrics that tie work to real business results. I can't tell you how many people I've seen just in the past few weeks put up slideshows or little webinars or videos that say the most important thing to measure is story points delivered, widgets delivered, flow metrics, and so on. But at the end of the day, you can get really great at flowing great outputs, but if the outputs are for A, poor quality, which the survey says they are, and B, not tied to business outcomes, then you're paying for flow for the sake of flow. So why don't we just measure better? Well, metrics are a problem. We have lots of data, probably stuff that we can pull out of Jira or pull out of, whatever we're using to manage work. But too much of that data gets noisy and it actually slows delivery down. Tons of metrics, but if the metrics don't mean anything, then it's going to be hard to use that data to prioritize the right work or to track business impact. And hey, it is hard. If you look at a 100,000 person organization, there are so many factors that influence revenue, customer retention, churn, the cost of operating the business, the cost of acquiring a customer, that it's really difficult to make one tweak down in the delivery room somewhere and say, oh, that definitely impacted revenue. This is one of the reasons why Agile is so hard to scale. There are so many things, so many variables, so much complexity that goes into the success or failure of a business that it's really difficult sometimes to measure the impact of what we do. But it could start with simpler yet more effective measures like time to market. How long does it take you to put an experiment in front of a customer who can help you validate it or give you money for it? That's a great place to start. Product adoption or growth. You release a new product and customers never use it. Guess what? You built the wrong thing. But do we measure that? Not really. So net, it's going to be really tough for some organizations to figure out how Agile impacts the bottom line, but we have to get this right, or we're going to see a same version of this report next year until eventually Agile is fully dead. The simplest way to put it is stop measuring outputs and start measuring outcomes. And centralize that data so it's easier for the business to get a fuller picture. It's not about collecting more info. It's about collecting info that actually works, that helps us make strategic decisions. If we can't demonstrate that shareholder value soon, organizations are not going to be patient with us forever. They're going to start canceling entire programs if it's not clear that Agile's providing value. We want return on investment as executives, as business owners. Big organizations do so many things that scale well. They have infinite money for systems and people, expensive tools, tons of information. They can invest in marketing and research and all that stuff, but a lot of it is still done manually. Let's talk about AI for a second. Could AI help us with these data problems? Yes. Could they help us with some flow problems? Yes. Could they help us automate things that further generate cost savings that impact the bottom line? Yes. But the problem is with AI, much like Agile, by the way, the tech is moving faster than the playbook, and I'm quoting the report here. That's kind of a familiar story for anyone who's been watching Agile scale for over a decade. There's no coordinated strategy, and a coordinated strategy will probably end up looking an awful lot like waterfall or feeling like it in the sense that it doesn't shorten time to market, time to revenue. Adoption's kind of patchy and siloed, just like Agile and Scrum. Small pockets of innovation are doing it well, but then there's a whole bunch of resistors and hesitators around it who aren't quite ready. People are getting excited, but the deployments are kind of scattered and they pop up like pimples on a teenager's neck. And without that essential structure, guardrails, and governance, this whole thing is going to be a nightmare. According to the report, 9 out of 10 people can see value in detecting delivery risks early and surfacing real-time insights. But a lot of that, of course, depends on the quality of the data. The report says garbage in, garbage out. It's a perfect example. So the recommendation from the report is that organizations that succeed won't just adopt AI tools willy-nilly. They're going to ensure that the data feeding those tools is accurate, consistent, trustworthy, and relevant to the organization. One of the things the report emphasizes is that agentic AI could be a real boost to autonomy. Tools that create entire workflows end to end. Enforcing governance, planning, and prioritization. The recommendation here is pretty simple. If you're going to use agentic AI, you have to treat it like a digital team member. According to the report, it should include SLAs, a specific and defined scope, and a clear feedback loop. And don't forget that as much as agentic AI allows us to codify automation, there's still spots where human oversight is required, and you have to make room for that. I'm quoting the report here. Those who treat intelligent systems as accountable contributors will turn AI from a productivity booster to a true strategic engine. 84% of organizations now use AI tools, but only 10% have formalized an AI-assisted model. So adoption threatens to outpace trust and governance. Again, just like Agile and Scrum. Without clear guardrails and real measurable proof based on trustworthy, centralized data, this whole thing's going to be a mess. So one more time, just in summary, after 20 years of doing this Agile thing, we're finally looping back to the original promise, intention, and manifesto of agility, what it was meant to deliver. Measurable outcomes, not just completed sprints. They're demanding accountability, not activity. And finally, AI, also known as tools, won't fix what broken measurements can't see. So the recommendations are moving beyond frameworks and ceremonies to become a foundation for how organizations plan, deliver, and steer. Lasting adoption will depend on connecting work to measurable outcomes and ROI. So did you catch that? If you want to survive and thrive with the Agile skills that you've worked so hard to build and develop, you have to become more measurable outcome focused, not output focused, but metrics that matter to the business. Totally different language. And you have to stop worrying about the precision and rigidity of your frameworks and your ceremonies, but rather to become nimble, which to me is the pure definition of the word agility, to help businesses plan, organize, deliver, and steer. So this is why in 2026, I'm focusing on 2 things. Number 1, having the leadership skill and confidence to speak to managers, leaders, and executives about their big pain points. Meaning, what are the metrics that are hard to see? What are the metrics that are hard to move? What is the biggest thing that you would change if you could? In an environment where speed to market and ROI is the number 1 priority. That's the stuff that I teach in the Forge and the Forge Lightning. How to use everything we know about Agile and agility to serve the organization better. Because if you're good at scaling a framework, all you're going to do is help the tech organization automate, smooth out how they build and release software. But being really good at building and releasing software of poor quality with low business value will eventually get you fired. 76% of organizations are talking about increased scrutiny on ROI and business impact. They're done paying for Agile as a philosophy. It's sweet and it's nice and it sounds great, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't not just return the investment, but multiply it, your days are numbered. People are starting to examine and audit the spend. So if what you're pitching as your value is better Scrum, then you're a cost. On the other hand, if you pitch protecting your ROI by ensuring that the right stuff gets built, and as a bonus, if we can do it better and faster than the competition, now you're an asset. The best thing you can do to be an asset to an organization after that is to make sure that what you coach is not how to do Agile or Scrum better, but rather to install some kind of an engine that connects business strategy to execution. Whether that execution is inside a tech team or anywhere else in the organization almost doesn't matter. If you love tech, stay there. But tech for tech's sake is not useful. Clearly, by reading this report, you can see it. So stop talking about process improvement, framework improvement, but rather frame what you do as operational risk management somehow. You're fixing that disconnect between the executives and their strategy and their desires, struggles, and problems to the execution teams, which is right now causing them to build the wrong stuff super efficiently. Now that's one side, is being that leader, offering that service and offering that value instead of what we've classically focused on. But the second side is this big blue ocean for entrepreneurs. And that's where the stuff I'm doing with Forge Genesis comes in. Agile certifications are saturated, they're declining in value, and everyone I know who teaches certified courses has reported that the market is flat. The opportunity then lies in things that solve the specific pain points that organizations have. Instead of trudging around trying to find job openings under the label Agile Coach, Scrum Master, Product Owner, etc., can you use your Agile skills to create a product either for other Agile practitioners, for businesses, or, hey, totally outside of the Agile game? There's a million examples that I've already seen from the existing Forge Genesis. Could we teach a different way of facilitating? Could we teach Agile Scrum to organizations other than the big buyers? That is to say, companies who can really implement Agile and Scrum because the leadership is sitting in the same room. Maybe we niche down and go Agile Scrum for non-technical concerns like education or human resources. Maybe you want to focus on an Agile implementation of AI, one that delivers real value, not just adoption. Well, here's the problem. If you're going to propose and sell any of those things, you need to get out of the technical basement and learn how to sell, market, validate your products, brand yourself, and what are the mechanisms for getting your offering out there on the internet, on social media, all those things that you need to learn how to do if you're going to lead the change in this marketplace. Because this report proves without a doubt, that things have to change or they're going to change for you. I have something you might want to check out. If you want to stay put inside your organization, but you're interested in some of these changes that the report is suggesting, I have a little product for you that will help you shift your focus and your title from Scrum Master or Agile Coach to an outcomes business partner, someone who helps the organization realize the value that they're hoping to get from their Agile investment. So if you don't know how to focus on the metrics that matter, what are the metrics that organizations care about? And then what are the experiments that are worth trying to see if we can make a dent in those metrics? And then how do we get the attention of the right people so that we're authorized and supported in doing this? That's a skill all unto itself. And I've got a little guide. It costs $17 that will help you understand where to start, what to focus on, so that you can leave all of the other framework zombies behind and be in demand instead of in crisis. If you can be the practitioner that proves that ROI, better still, if you can be the practitioner that solves that quality problem, and at the same time soothes their need for a little bit more predictability, you become the bridge then between business and executive layer and the technical delivery side or the delivery side anywhere in the organization. I'll show you how to do that. The link's in the show notes below. Now, don't let this just be an entertaining listen. Make some notes. Put this up as your screensaver. Put it on a sticky where everyone can see it. It's the business value. It's the ROI. It's not your outputs. It's not the flow. It's not your proficiency with certain tools. And it's certainly not your nuanced understanding of any given framework. You know, one of the things most interesting about this report is they talk about how solving some of the problems in Agile frequently reveals the next problem in the chain. And we never seem to get to a place where this is working well. I think there's a reason for that, and the report doesn't touch on it. I've said it many times. The biggest problem that we experience in all enterprise, especially large-scale ones, is our discomfort with discomfort. The unwillingness to take risk. The unwillingness to try something and have it fail. The preference to do familiar, predictable things rather than scary, untested things. But the market demands doing the scary, untested thing. If you can do that and help organizations do it too, you will continue to be successful. And maybe we can restore trust in this Agile brand after all. Let's talk some more. That's going to be my focus for 2026. My friend, I hope you found this valuable. I'm grateful for you tuning in. If you have comments or questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Look down in the show notes below for all the different resources that I have on this stuff. I look forward to seeing you next time. And until then, stay badass.